The Blackmail Box. Chapter 1. The Dead Man's Last Instruction. Some lied with tears. Some lied with silence. Some lied by pretending Victor Delgado had been a husband, a father, a benefactor, a man worth mourning. But I knew better. We all did. My father had never been loved the way ordinary men were loved. He had been feared, obeyed, studied, calculated around. Even his charity had teeth. Even his gifts came with invisible hooks buried deep beneath the ribbon. And yet, there we stood beneath a hard gray sky, dressed in black, watching 6 men lower a mahogany coffin into wet earth, as if Victor Delgado had not spent 72 years making the world kneel. The priest spoke of mercy. My sister Elena dabbed the corner of her eye with a folded linen handkerchief. Though I knew her well enough to know she only cried when it served a purpose. Marco stood to my right, jaw tight, sunglasses hiding his eyes despite the absence of sun. He had always looked like the family portrait brought to life, tall, handsome, broad-shouldered, with the careless grace of a man who had never truly paid for any damage he caused. Rafael stood behind us, restless as a thief in church, his polished shoes sinking slightly into the damp grass. He kept checking his phone, then catching himself, then looking toward the coffin with a performance of grief too sharp to be convincing. And me, I stood with my hands folded in front of me, feeling nothing at all. That frightened me more than grief would have. I was Isabel Delgado, 3rd child, 2nd daughter, professional disappointment, family afterthought. In photographs, I was the quiet one at the edge. At dinners, I was the one asked to pass the salt, but not included in decisions. When reporters wrote about the Delgado family, they mentioned Elena's legal brilliance, Marco's charm, Rafael's financial instincts. I was usually described as private. That was the polite word for invisible. But invisibility had its uses. It taught me how to listen without being noticed. It taught me where people hid keys. It taught me which smiles were weapons, and which apologies were rehearsed. Most of all, it taught me that in the Delgado family, survival did not belong to the loudest child. It belonged to the one who remembered everything. The priest finished his blessing. A handful of soil struck the coffin lid with a soft final sound. Clara, my father's 2nd wife, stepped forward with a single white rose. She was beautiful in the way expensive things were beautiful. Controlled, polished, cold to the touch. Her black veil softened her face, but not enough. Her eyes were dry. Her mouth trembled, only when people were looking. "My Victor," she whispered. Elena's mouth barely moved. "Performance of the year." I glanced at her. She didn't look at me. She never did unless she needed something. Marco leaned close enough that I smelled the mint on his breath. "Careful. She probably has microphones in the pearls." Rafael gave a small laugh, too loud for a graveside service. Clara turned her head slightly. The laugh died in Rafael's throat. Even dead, my father had arranged the weather perfectly. Rain threatened, but did not fall. Wind moved through the cemetery in quiet, theatrical waves. Cameras lingered beyond the iron fence, held back by security men in black coats. Politicians came. Judges came. Bankers came. Men who hated one another shook hands over my father's grave, because Victor Delgado's name still had gravity. He had owned shipping companies, real estate trusts, offshore funds, private security firms, and enough legitimate businesses to bury the illegitimate ones beneath layers of paperwork. To the public, he was a self-made titan, a stern philanthropist, a complicated man. To his children, he was a locked room we had spent our whole lives trying to escape. The service ended. People came forward with their condolences, offering us soft voices and careful touches on the arm. "Your father was a giant. He changed this city." He was hard, yes, but fair. I wanted to laugh at that. Victor Delgado had never been fair. Fairness was for people who lacked power. He believed in loyalty, leverage, and consequences. As children, we learned those words before we learned mercy. When I was 9, I broke a porcelain horse in his study. I confessed because I thought honesty would save me. He listened, nodded, then made me write a full page explaining not why I had broken it, But why confessing after damage was already done did not undo weakness. When Marco crashed his first car at 16, my father did not yell. He simply made the problem disappear, then forced Marco to sit at dinner every night for a month beside an empty chair. For the person who might have been sitting there, he said. When Elena won her first debate tournament, he told her victory was meaningless unless her opponent left afraid to face her again. When Rafael stole cash from Clara's dressing table, my father gave him twice the amount and said, "Never steal small. Small theft is an insult to ambition." That was our upbringing, not love. Training. After the burial, we returned to the Delgado estate for the reception. The house sat behind iron gates, on 12 acres of land overlooking the river. An old stone mansion renovated with glass steel, and surveillance systems hidden behind carved wood and antique frames. I had not lived there in years, but the place still knew how to make my chest tighten. Inside, caterers moved like ghosts. A string quartet played something soft and expensive. Guests murmured beneath chandeliers. Large portraits of my father watched from every wall. There was Victor with a senator, Victor with a cardinal, Victor cutting a ribbon at a children's hospital, Victor standing beside a cargo ship with his hand on Marco's shoulder, Victor beside Elena at her law school graduation, Victor seated with Rafael in the family office, both of them pretending to laugh at something. There were fewer pictures of me. One near the back hall. I was maybe 12, standing stiffly beside my father at some charity event. He was not touching my shoulder. He was not smiling. Neither was I. I drifted toward the library, needing air, but Elena caught me before I reached the doors. "Don't disappear," she said. I wasn't. "You always are." I looked at her then. Really looked. Elena was 42, immaculate in a black tailored dress that made grief look executive. Her hair was pinned low. Her pearl earrings were modest enough to suggest taste and expensive enough to announce money. She had our father's eyes. Dark, steady, impossible to read. "Do you need something?" I asked. "The will reading is at 6. I know. I want us aligned." That almost made me smile. Aligned. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Father liked games. Whatever happens tonight, we do not let Clara divide us." "Us," I repeated. "Yes, us." It was fascinating how quickly family became useful when money entered the room. "Elena, the last time you called me, you asked whether I still had access to Mother's old medical records. That was different. You thought Clara might contest something, and I was right to consider it." "Number, you were right to use me." Her expression cooled. "This is not the time for old resentments. In this house, old resentments are practically furniture." Before she could answer, Marco appeared beside us, holding a glass of whiskey he should not have had yet. "Are we forming alliances already? You wound me. I thought betrayal started after cocktails." Elena gave him a sharp look. "Try to stay sober until after the will." Marco smiled. "Try to unclench before the autopsy." "There was no autopsy," I said. They both looked at me. I hadn't meant to say it aloud. Marco's smile faded slightly. "What?" "There was no autopsy," I repeated. "Father had a private physician sign off. Heart failure." Elena's eyes narrowed. "How do you know that?" I almost said, "Because I read things people leave lying around." Instead I said, "Clara mentioned it." Elena turned her gaze across the room to where Clara stood surrounded by donors and city officials, one gloved hand resting delicately at her throat. Marco took a drink. "Heart failure, convenient. People die, Marco," Elena said. "Not him." That silence landed hard between us. Because Marco was right. Victor Delgado did not feel like a man who died. He felt like a man who waited. At 6 o'clock, Mr. Soria summoned us to the West Study. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Soria had been my father's attorney for 30 years, a narrow man with silver hair, rimless glasses, and a face so still it seemed carved rather than aged. He had handled lawsuits, acquisitions, settlements, quiet disappearances of scandal, and God knew what else. If my father had a shadow that wore a suit, it was Soria. The West study had always been forbidden when we were children. It smelled of leather, old paper, and cigar smoke that seemed trapped in the wood. Heavy curtains covered the windows. The fireplace was lit, though the room was already warm. A long table waited in the center. On it sat 4 sealed envelopes, a black folder, and a small brass key. The key drew every eye. Clara entered last. "Am I included?" she asked softly. Soria looked at her. "You are required." Not invited. Required. That seemed to unsettle her. We took our seats. Elena sat straight, backed hands folded. Marco lounged with forced carelessness. Rafael tapped one finger against the table until Elena whispered, "Stop." I sat across from the key and tried not to stare at it. Soria opened the black folder. Victor Delgado executed his final testament 6 months prior to his passing, he began. He was, at the time, of sound mind and full legal capacity. Marco muttered. "Depends who you ask." Soria paused, just long enough to make Marco look like a child. Then he continued. "The distribution of minor personal effects has already been arranged, Mrs. Clara Delgado will retain her personal residence in Lisbon, the Monteverde apartment, and the charitable foundation endowment, as previously stipulated in her marital agreement." Clara's face did not change, but something flickered in her eyes. That was not enough. She had expected more. Elena noticed too. Rafael definitely noticed. Soria turned a page. The principal Delgado portfolio, including domestic holdings, international equity positions, private company shares, real estate controlling interests, and associated management authority, shall not be divided equally. Marco sat up. Rafael stopped tapping. Elena's gaze sharpened. There it was. The real funeral. Soria continued. "Instead, the portfolio shall pass in full to one of Victor Delgado's 4 biological children." Clara inhaled sharply. Marco gave a low whistle. "All to one?" Elena's voice was flat. "On what basis?" Soria lifted the brass key between 2 fingers. "This key opens safety. Deposit box 419 at Marwick Federal Trust." The room changed, not visibly. Not in a way a stranger would notice. But I felt it. A tightening. A collective inward step. Every Delgado child understood locked boxes. Our father loved locked boxes. He had kept them everywhere. In walls, behind paintings, inside desk panels, beneath floorboards. He believed secrets should be protected physically, not just verbally. Soria placed the key down again. "Inside the box are 4 black binders, one labeled for each of you." Rafael laughed once. "That sounds ominous." Soria did not smile. "It is." The fire snapped. No one moved. Soria read from the page. "To my children, Elena, Marco, Isabel, and Rafael, if you are hearing this, then I have either died or allowed you to believe I have died long enough for the lesson to begin." My stomach went cold. Soria continued in my father's voice, though his tone remained his own. "You have each disappointed me in different ways. Elena, you mistake control for strength. Marco, you mistake charm for immunity. Isabel, you mistake silence for innocence. Rafael, you mistake cleverness for intelligence." Rafael's face flushed. Marco's jaw flexed. Elena stared at Soria as if she could examine the dead through him. I felt my fingers curl beneath the table. Soria turned the page. "In box 419, you will find evidence, real evidence. Years of it. Crimes, betrayals, weaknesses, appetites, debts, affairs, frauds, accidents, and lies. Each binder contains material damaging enough to destroy the child named on its cover." Marco stood. "What the hell is this?" Soria looked up. "Sit down." Marco did not move. Soria added quietly. "The instructions anticipated resistance. If any beneficiary leaves before the reading is complete, that beneficiary is disqualified." Marco remained standing another second, breathing hard. Then he sat. Soria resumed. You may ask why a father would collect such things. The answer is simple. A father should know his children, not as they wish to be seen, but as they are when they think no one is watching. My throat tightened. Something had shifted in me from dread to fury, because I knew then that the binder with my name on it was not empty. None of ours would be. We were Delgados. Innocence had never survived long in that house. Soria read on. The rules are as follows. Each child will receive temporary access to all 4 binders. For 7 days, you may negotiate, trade, destroy, expose, conceal, or weaponize the contents as you see fit. At the end of 7 days, Mr. Soria will determine which child has successfully destroyed, neutralized, or rendered useless the most damaging evidence against the other 3. Elena leaned forward. That's insane. Soria ignored her. That child will inherit the Delgado portfolio in its entirety and assume control of all associated operations. Rafael whispered, Operations? Clara's face had gone pale. That interested me. Soria continued. If none of you acts, the entire portfolio will be liquidated and donated to institutions I despise. If you attempt to involve law enforcement, the contents of all 4 binders will be distributed automatically to federal agencies, media outlets, spouses, business partners, and victims where applicable. Marco's sunglasses sat folded on the table. Without them, I could see the fear beginning behind his eyes. Victims. The word hung there like smoke. Soria closed the folder. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Elena said, This is not legally enforceable. Soria turned to her. Parts of it are, parts of it are not. Your father was aware you would identify the distinction quickly. He also believed legal enforceability would be irrelevant compared to personal exposure. Elena's mouth tightened. Rafael leaned back, trying to recover his grin and failing. This is a sick joke. No, Clara said. Everyone turned to her. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Victor did not joke. For the first time that day, I believed her grief might be real. Not grief that he was gone, grief that he was still moving. Marco pushed his chair back slightly. What exactly is in these binders? Soria looked at him. You will see tomorrow morning at 10, Marwick Federal Trust. All 4 of you must be present for the box to be opened. And Clara? Elena asked. Soria paused. Mrs. Delgado will also attend. Clara's eyes lifted sharply. That was new information to her. Good. I was not the only one trapped. Elena stood. I want a copy of the will. You will receive the portions relevant to you. I want the entire document. Number Elena gave him the look that had made junior partners cry. Mr. Soria, I am not one of your frightened clerks. No, he said calmly. You are one of Victor Delgado's frightened children. Marco laughed under his breath, despite himself. Elena turned on him. You find this funny. I find it familiar. Rafael rose too quickly, knocking his chair back. I am not doing this. Whatever he has, it's old. It's bluff. Soria opened the folder again, removed a single sheet, and slid it across the table. Rafael froze. No one else moved. The sheet stopped in front of him, face down. Soria said, Your father instructed me to provide one sample if any of you questioned authenticity. Rafael stared at the page. His hand hovered over it. For once, my youngest brother had no joke ready. Turn it over, Marco said. Shut up, Rafael whispered. Elena watched him with clinical interest. Slowly, Rafael turned the page. I saw only a few things from where I sat. A bank logo, a transaction table, a signature, and the name of a shell company I recognized from a news story involving a collapsed pension fund. Rafael's face drained of color so quickly, I thought he might faint. He folded the page once, then again. Soria extended his hand. The sample remains with me. Rafael clutched it. Soria did not blink. After a moment, Rafael handed it back. No one asked what it was. We did not need to. The box was real. The threat was real. And if Rafael's sample was that bad, then whatever waited in the other binders was worse than any of us wanted to imagine. The meeting ended with no formal dismissal. Soria gathered the folder, the envelopes, and the key. He left the study first, carrying our father's final game in one hand. Clara followed him out, without looking at us. That left the 4 Delgado children alone in the West study for the first time in years. The fire kept burning. Outside, the reception murmured on, full of people eating delicate food beneath my father's portraits, unaware that his children had just been handed knives and told only one of us would leave the room clean. Marco walked to the bar cart and poured whiskey into a crystal glass. Elena said, "Bad idea." He drank it anyway. Bad day. Rafael sat down again. Hard. "We need to cooperate." That surprised me. Elena looked at him. "Do we?" "Yes," he said. "Obviously, we get the binders. Destroy everything. Refuse to play." Marco laughed. "You mean destroy yours first? Screw you." "No. Truly. Rafael, I am moved. Family unity. Very inspiring, especially from the man who almost swallowed his own tongue over one piece of paper." Rafael stood again. "You don't know what you saw. I know what fear looks like." "Enough," Elena snapped. Her voice cut through the room. For a second, she sounded exactly like our father. That scared me more than the will. Elena turned to each of us in turn. "Listen carefully. Father designed this to make us turn on one another. That means the only rational move is not to." Marco lifted his glass. "There she is, the general." "She's right," Rafael said quickly. Elena ignored him. "Tomorrow, we open the box. We review the contents together. No one removes anything without agreement. No one destroys anything without witnesses. No one contacts outsiders. No one panics." Marco smiled faintly. "And no one betrays anyone." Elena's eyes hardened. "Not if they want to survive." I had said nothing naturally. They noticed only when my silence became inconvenient. Elena turned to me. "Isabel?" "What? You agree?" I looked at my siblings. Elena, who wanted command before she knew the battlefield. Marco, who joked when he was afraid and smiled when he was guilty. Rafael, who had already begun calculating which of us would be easiest to sacrifice. And me, the quiet one, the private one, the forgotten daughter. My father's words echoed in my head. "You mistake silence for innocence." I wondered what he had on me. I wondered which version of my life he had found. I wondered whether any of them understood that blackmail was not dangerous, because it exposed what you had done. It was dangerous, because it exposed what you would do to keep from being known. "I agree," I said. Elena studied me. "Good." But I was lying. Not because I planned to betray them, not yet. I was lying because the moment Soria read my father's instructions, I understood something my siblings were too proud, too guilty, or too frightened to see. This was not a contest about evidence. It was a contest about character. Victor Delgado had spent his life creating criminals who could pass as heirs. Now, from the grave, he wanted to know which of us had learned best. The reception ended after 8. Guests left in black cars. The caterers cleared glasses and plates. Security men locked gates behind the last departing politician. I did not leave. Neither did the others. None of us said why. Rain struck the windows of my childhood bedroom in hard. I sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing my funeral dress, staring at my reflection in the dark glass. For years, I had believed I escaped this house. I had built a life small enough to avoid my father's shadow, a modest apartment, a quiet job consulting for nonprofit archives, friends he did not know, habits he would find boring. I had made myself uninteresting on purpose. But Victor Delgado had never mistaken quiet for harmless. That was what frightened me. A soft knock came at the door. I did not answer. The door opened anyway. Marco stood in the hall, hair damp, shirt collar open, whiskey still on his breath. "You awake?" He stepped inside and closed the door. We had been close once, Before the family taught us closeness was liability, Marco used to sneak me books from the forbidden shelves. I used to cover for him when he slipped out at night. Then we grew up. Secrets became currency. Affection became risk. He looked around the room. God, he kept it the same. He kept everything. Marco nodded, then leaned against the dresser. For once, he did not perform charm. He looked tired, older. "What do you think is in mine?" he asked. "That depends on which sin he liked best." A short laugh escaped him, then silence. Rain filled the space between us. Finally he said, "There are things Elena can't see." I looked at him. He swallowed. "Things no one can see." "There it is," I said. "What?" The cooperation plan lasted 4 hours. His face tightened. "I am serious." "So am I. I am asking for your help." "No," I said. "You are asking whether I am still invisible enough to be useful." That hurt him. I saw it land. "Good. I deserved that," he said quietly. The old version of me might have softened. The funeral had buried her too. "What did you do, Marco?" His eyes moved to the rain-streaked window. For a long moment, I thought he might tell me. Then the Delgado in him won. Nothing I had a choice in. I almost laughed. That was the family anthem. Nothing I had a choice in. He left a minute later. I locked the door behind him. Then I crossed the room, knelt beside the old radiator, and reached behind the loose section of baseboard I had discovered when I was 13. My fingers found the small metal drive still taped there. I had hidden it years ago. The night I learned my father's cameras did not cover every room. Everyone thought the Blackmail Box began tomorrow. They were wrong. In our family, it had begun long before any of us were born. I held the drive in my palm and listened to the rain batter the glass. Somewhere in the mansion, floorboards creaked. Pipes groaned. Old walls settled. And then, from the corner of the ceiling above the wardrobe, came the faintest red blink. Once, twice, gone. I stopped breathing. There had never been a camera there before. Slowly, I stood. The room was dark, except for the storm light. I looked directly at the corner. Nothing. No sound. No movement. Only my own reflection in the window, pale and still, holding a secret my dead father should not have known existed. Then my phone buzzed. No caller 499. A message appeared on the screen. "Sleep well, Isabel. Tomorrow is the easy part." My hand went numb, because beneath the words was a photograph. Not old, not from years ago. It was a photograph of me standing in that room right now, holding the hidden drive in my open palm. And for the first time since they lowered Victor Delgado into the ground, I felt something like grief. Not because my father was dead, because I was suddenly, horribly certain he wasn't.
Chapter 2. Box 419. By morning, none of us looked like grieving children anymore. We looked like suspects. The Delgado estate had a way of turning sleep into interrogation. I had spent the night in my childhood bedroom with the lights on, the hidden drive wrapped in tissue and taped beneath the drawer of my nightstand. I had not put it back behind the baseboard. That hiding place was dead now. Someone had seen me retrieve it. Someone had photographed me holding it. Someone had sent me that message. "Sleep well, Isabel. Tomorrow is the easy part." I read those words so many times before dawn that they seemed burned into the inside of my eyelids. By 7 I had showered, dressed in a charcoal coat and black trousers, and searched every inch of my room. I found the camera at last behind a tiny drilled opening in the carved molding above the wardrobe. It was no bigger than the head of a nail, perfectly placed, professionally installed. Recent. That detail mattered. The wood dust inside the molding was fresh. My father had not installed it when I was a child. Someone had put it there knowing I would return after the funeral, knowing I would reach for the drive, knowing exactly where to watch. I wanted to believe it was Soria, or Clara, or one of my siblings, anyone but Victor. But belief was a luxury in our family. Evidence mattered. And the evidence said the dead man still had eyes. I left the room just after 9. The hallway outside was silent, except for the low hum of the estate's climate system. The house smelled of rain, old polish and funeral flowers, already beginning to rot in their vases. Downstairs, the staff moved carefully, faces blank. People who worked for the Delgado family learned quickly that curiosity shortened careers. In the breakfast room, Elena sat alone with coffee and a tablet, already dressed like she was preparing for court. Her hair was pulled back. Her makeup was flawless. A legal pad sat beside her untouched plate, filled with neat columns of possible contingencies. She looked up as I entered. "You look awful," she said. "Good morning to you too. Did you sleep?" None of us did." That was probably the closest Elena came to comfort. I poured coffee and stood near the window. She watched me over the rim of her cup. "Marco came to see you last night." My fingers tightened around the mug. Of course she knew. "In this house, that hardly qualifies as news," I said. "What did he want?" "What everyone wants from me eventually. Something quiet." "Did he tell you what's in his binder?" "Number?" "Did he ask for help?" I turned. "Elena, are you questioning me as a sister or as an attorney?" "As someone who doesn't want this family destroyed." That made me laugh once without humor. She frowned. "You think that's funny?" "I think this family was destroyed before we were old enough to spell our last name." Her expression cooled. "That kind of fatalism is indulgent." "Number, it's accurate." Before she could answer, Rafael entered wearing sunglasses indoors and carrying the hollow confidence of a man whose nerves had been running laps all night. He had shaved badly. A small cut marked his jaw. "Who here is Marco?" Elena asked. Rafael dropped into a chair. "Probably seducing a widow in the coatroom." "He went to the garage," I said. Elena's eyes moved to me. "What?" I asked. "I passed the window." Rafael removed his sunglasses and rubbed his eyes. "We need rules before we get to the bank." "We established rules," Elena said. "No, you established rules, that's different." Elena placed her cup down. "Do you have a better suggestion?" "Yes. Nobody touches their own binder first." Silence. That was smarter than I expected from Rafael. And Elena knew it. Marco entered before she could respond. Car keys in hand, hair still damp, face guarded. He looked at each of us and smiled. "Family breakfast. How wholesome." Elena stood. "Rafael has proposed that no one touches their own binder first." Marco's smile faded by a degree. "Interesting," he said. "Isn't it?" Rafael replied. Marco stepped closer. "You always get brave when you are terrified. And you always get charming when you are guilty." "Enough," Elena said. I watched them with the strange calm that comes when fear has passed a certain threshold. They were all looking at one another as threats now, not siblings. Threats. Victor would have loved it. At 9:30 a.m. we left for Marwick Federal Trust. We did not drive together. Elena took her black Mercedes. Rafael took a silver Porsche he could not afford unless his finances were dirtier than I had guessed. Marco drove an old Midnight, blue Jaguar that had belonged to our mother before she died, which he had somehow convinced our father to let him keep. I rode with Clara. Not because I wanted to, because she asked. She waited beside a sleek town car at the bottom of the stone steps, dressed in ivory beneath her black coat, her veil gone, her face paler in daylight. "Ride with me, Isabel," she said. It was not a question. I looked toward my siblings. Elena noticed. Marco noticed. Rafael pretended not to. "Why?" I asked. Clara's mouth curved faintly. "Because you are the only one who listens before speaking." That was exactly the kind of compliment Victor used to give when he was setting a trap. Still, I got into the car. For the first 10 minutes, neither of us spoke. The city moved past the tinted windows in wet streaks, gray buildings, traffic lights, pedestrians hunched under umbrellas. My father's funeral was already on the morning news. Outside a coffee shop, a screen flashed his photograph beside the words. Business titan Victor Delgado laid to rest. Laid to rest if only. Clara sat beside me, gloved hands folded over a small black purse. Finally, she said, "He contacted you." My blood chilled. I turned my head slowly. "Who?" Her eyes stayed on the road ahead. "Do not insult me, Isabel." "What do you know?" "I know you received something last night." "How?" "Because I did too." That answer knocked the air out of the car. Clara opened her purse, removed her phone, and passed it to me. The screen showed a message from no caller 499. "Wear ivory tomorrow. Grief looks better when it lies." Beneath it was a photograph of Clara standing alone in her bedroom, removing her black earrings in front of a mirror. I stared at it. The angle was high. Hidden camera, just like mine. "When?" I asked. 2:13 a.m. Mine came at 12:40, 4 p.m. She took the phone back. Her fingers trembled slightly before she closed them into a fist. "Is he alive?" I asked. For the first time since I had known her, Clara looked afraid enough to be honest. "I watched him die," she said, but she did not sound convinced. "You were there?" "I was there when he collapsed. I was there when Dr. Menendez pronounced him. I was there when they closed the coffin." "Did you see his body in the coffin?" She did not answer quickly enough. "Clara." Her voice dropped. "Victor never allowed weakness to be seen. Even in death, he gave instructions. Closed coffin after family viewing. No public viewing, no autopsy unless demanded by law." "Did you demand one?" Her eyes flashed. "Would you have?" That was the terrible truth. Not one of us would have dared disturb Victor Delgado's final arrangement, even if that arrangement made no sense. The car pulled up in front of Marwick Federal Trust at 9:58 a.m. The building was old money carved into stone, tall columns, bronze doors. Security discreet enough to suggest it could become violent very quickly. Above the entrance, the bank's name gleamed in letters polished by generations of inherited secrets. Elena was already there, speaking sharply to Mr. Soria. Marco leaned against a pillar smoking a cigarette, which he had not done in years. Rafael paced near the curb, phone pressed to his ear, whispering something that ended abruptly when he saw us. Soria checked his watch. "Now that everyone is present," he said, "we may proceed." Inside, the bank manager greeted Soria by name and avoided looking directly at the rest of us. That told me enough. Victor's money had lived here. Maybe parts of his soul, too. We passed through 2 security checkpoints, surrendered our phones, signed forms none of us were allowed to copy, and followed the manager down an elevator that required both a keycard and a palm scan. The vault level smelled cold and metallic. Every sound echoed. Our footsteps, the manager's keys, Rafael's breathing. At the end of a marble corridor stood a private viewing room with no windows, no paintings, no decorative distractions, just a long steel table beneath bright white lights. The manager and Soria opened the vault together. Box 419 was longer than I expected, not a small container for jewelry or documents, a drawer. A casket in miniature. The manager carried it with both hands into the viewing room and placed it on the table. Soria dismissed him. The door closed. The lock clicked for a moment. None of us moved. The box sat between us, matte black, with a brass number plate. 419. 4 children, 1 father, 9 lives destroyed, maybe more. Soria placed yesterday's key into the lock and turned it. The sound was soft. Final. He lifted the lid. Inside were 4 black binders, each thick enough to hold a lifetime. Elena Delgado, Marco Delgado, Isabel Delgado, Rafael Delgado. There was also a 5th item. A small digital recorder. Soria removed it and pressed play. My father's voice filled the room, not Soria's reading voice. Victor himself. Low, controlled, amused. "If you are listening to this, then at least some of you were obedient enough to arrive on time. Good. Punctuality is the first courtesy of dangerous people." No one breathed. The sound of his voice did something to us that the coffin had not. It resurrected childhood. Posture changed, shoulders squared, eyes lowered, then rose again in defiance. Even from a speaker he commanded the room. "I imagine you have already discussed cooperation," Victor said. Elena likely proposed structure. Rafael likely proposed safeguards that benefit himself. Marco likely made jokes because fear makes him sentimental. Isabel likely said very little and noticed more than the rest of you combined. My mouth went dry. Marco looked at me. I looked at the recorder. "I have no interest in harmony," my father continued. "Harmony is what weak families call paralysis. You are Delgados. Each of you carries my blood, my appetites, my flaws, and perhaps my capacity for command. But command cannot be inherited by affection. It must be proven under pressure." Elena whispered, "You bastard." Victor's recorded voice went on. "The binders contain verified material, some collected by me, some purchased, some received from people who feared me, some, I suspect, hidden badly by you. Do not waste time denying what is documented. Denial is for amateurs." Rafael turned away. "Each binder also contains one red envelope. Inside that envelope is the single most damaging item associated with that child. Destroying a red envelope counts more than destroying ordinary evidence. Exposing one may remove a rival entirely. Protecting your own may save your life, your reputation, or what remains of your soul." Soria stood beside the wall, impassive. Victor continued, "You will have 7 days. At the conclusion, Soria will evaluate outcomes according to my instructions. Do not threaten him. He has copies. Do not bribe him. I paid him more than you can. Do not kill him. That triggers contingencies none of you will survive." Marco muttered, "Jesus." "And one final matter," Victor said. The recorder crackled softly. "Assume you are being watched." The room went still. Not always, not everywhere, but often enough. My pulse slammed in my throat. Clara closed her eyes. Elena looked sharply at the ceiling corners. Rafael cursed under his breath. Victor's voice lowered. "What people do under observation is performance. What they do when they only suspect observation is character." A faint pause. Then, "Beggin." The recording clicked off. No one touched the binders. It was absurd, almost funny. We had been summoned, threatened, insulted, and invited to destroy one another. Yet the moment the game truly began, all 4 of us hesitated like children staring at a forbidden door. Elena recovered first. "No one opens anything yet." Marco gave her a look. "You are kidding. Number we need process. Rafael snapped. "There are red envelopes in there that can destroy us." "Exactly," Elena said. "Which is why no one grabs blindly." Clara spoke from near the door. "Victor wanted you to fight." Elena turned. "And what do you want?" Clara's expression went unreadable. "To survive the week." That was honest enough to be useless. I kept staring at my binder. Isabel Delgado. My name looked strange, printed in white on black, as if it belonged to someone dead, or someone accused. Rafael reached for Elena's binder. Marco caught his wrist. "No," Marco said. Rafael glared at him. "We said nobody touches their own first. And you chose hers first because you are selfless?" Elena stepped between them. "We opened them one at a time together." "Whose?" I asked. They all looked at me. I knew the answer before anyone said it. Mine, of course. The quiet one goes first, the safest test cut. Elena's gaze softened into something that almost resembled apology. "Isabel, your binder may be the least volatile." I smiled. "Because I am boring. I didn't say that. You didn't have to." Marco looked uncomfortable. Rafael looked relieved. Clara watched me like she was trying to solve a code. I reached for my own binder before anyone could object. Elena said, "Wait, number." I pulled it toward me. The cover was cold beneath my palm. I opened it. The first page was a photograph of me at 19, standing outside a courthouse in a blue coat I had forgotten owning. Behind it was a copy of a sealed juvenile record. My sealed juvenile record. Elena leaned in despite herself. I turned the page before she could read it fully. The next section contained emails from my university account. Deleted emails, messages I had sent to a campus journalist about a professor who was laundering grant money through a fake research nonprofit. I remembered those emails. I remembered the professor too. I remembered the night he cornered me in an archive room and told me people like my father did not raise daughters with consciences. He was wrong about the conscience, but not about the raising. There were photos, receipts, transcripts, a private settlement agreement I had signed under pressure after the professor's career ended, and the university needed silence more than justice. Marco frowned. This is what he had on you? A whistleblower thing? I kept turning pages. There was more. Of course there was more. A police report from 11 years ago. A man named Peter Langdon, age 26, found beaten behind a restaurant near the waterfront. No charges filed. I heard Rafael inhale. Marco's eyes moved to me. Elena, he said quietly. Don't. But Elena was already reading. Peter Langdon, she said. Why do I know that name? You don't, I said. That's Derek Lang's younger cousin, Rafael said. I looked at him. Of all people, Rafael remembered. Elena's expression sharpened. Langdon died 2 years later. Overdose, Marco said. I turned the next page. Photographs, not of the beating, of me outside the restaurant that night, of Peter grabbing my arm, of my face twisted with fear and rage, of another figure stepping from the alley. My father's driver, a man named Thomas. The report said Peter Langdon had been assaulted by unknown persons after an argument with an unidentified woman. Unknown persons, unidentified woman, Delgado words. I remembered the blood on the pavement. I remembered Thomas saying, "Your father says go home." I remembered going home. I remembered asking Victor what would happen. He had looked up from his desk and said, "That depends on whether you confuse guilt with responsibility." My hands had started to shake. I pressed them flat against the table. Rafael's voice was low. Did Dad cover that up? I looked at him. Dad caused half the things he covered up. No one answered. Then I saw the red envelope. It was taped inside the back cover. My name was written across it in my father's handwriting. Not printed, written Isabel. For a moment, the room narrowed to that single word, Elena said. We should not open the red envelopes yet. I laughed. It came out sharp and ugly. You wanted my binder first. That does not mean we act recklessly. Number, it means you wanted to measure the water with my body before stepping in, Marco said. Izzy. Number, I tore the envelope free. Soria moved slightly but did not stop me. Inside was a flash drive, small, silver. Identical to the one hidden in my bedroom. My heart stopped. Beside it was a folded note. I opened it. In Victor's handwriting, some secrets are not dangerous because they are false. They are dangerous because they are incomplete. I stared at the flash drive in my palm. The hidden drive in my room held recordings, files I had collected years ago, evidence against my father, evidence I had once thought might free me if I ever needed it. But this drive had come from him, which meant he knew. Maybe he had always known. Elena's voice sounded far away. What is on it? I don't know, Rafael said. Here is a computer station in here. He pointed toward the far wall. A secure terminal sat recessed beneath a locked panel. Soria stepped forward and opened it with a card. No external network, he said, per your father's instructions. I looked at him. You knew about this. I know the procedure, not the contents. That was probably true, probably. I inserted the drive. A single video file appeared. No title, just a date, May 18, 11 years ago. The night Peter Langdon was beaten. I wanted to close it. I wanted to smash the drive against the table. I wanted to tell all of them that the show was over, that I was done being my father's lesson, my siblings' test subject, the quiet body thrown first into the fire. But Marco was watching me with something like dread. Elena with hunger, she was trying to disguise as concern. Rafael with calculation, Clara with pity. Pity was the worst of it. So I clicked play. The video opened on grainy surveillance footage from the alley behind the restaurant. There I was, 19 years old. Peter Langdon had me by the wrist. He was drunk, angry, bigger than I remembered. The video had no sound, but I could see his mouth moving. I could see myself trying to pull away. Then Thomas appeared. Not alone. My father was with him. I gripped the edge of the table. Victor Delgado stepped into the frame wearing a dark overcoat, calm as a judge. Peter released me immediately. Even through grainy footage, fear rearranged his body. The video skipped forward. Peter was on his knees. Victor stood above him. Thomas held him by the collar. I watched my younger self shout something at my father. Victor did not look at me. He nodded once. Thomas struck Peter. Marco swore. Elena's face went white. The beating was not long. That somehow made it worse. Efficient, controlled. A message delivered by trained hands. Then the video shifted again. Peter lay curled on the ground. I was crying now, trying to go to him. Victor caught my arm. He turned me toward the camera. Not toward the camera. Toward whoever would one day watch the camera. His face was clear. His mouth moved slowly, and then the audio came in. My father's voice, 11 years younger. Remember this, Isabel. Compassion without power is just another form of begging. The video ended. No one spoke. My pulse hammered so loudly I could barely hear the room. I had remembered that night, as shame, as fear, as my own failure. But I had not remembered the camera. I had not remembered my father turning me toward it. I had not understood that he was not merely punishing Peter. He was recording a lesson for me. For now, Marco was the first to speak. That doesn't incriminate you. Elena turned to him. It places her at the scene of a violent assault tied to a man who later died. 2 years later, Marco said, under circumstances that could be re-examined if this became public. I looked at her then, really looked. My sister had already shifted from horror to utility. The evidence had become a tool in her mind. Maybe my father was right about her. Rafael folded his arms. But it hurts Dad more than Isabel. Clara said softly. If he is dead. There it was again, the thought none of us could bury. Elena closed my binder. This changes nothing. We need to inspect all binders. I removed the flash drive from the terminal and held it tightly. Elena extended her hand. That stays with the group. Number, Isabel. Number. Her eyes hardened. Do not become emotional. That word did it. Emotional. The family word for inconvenient pain. I stepped closer to her. You wanted my binder opened first, because you thought whatever was inside would be manageable. You thought I would be manageable. That was your mistake. Marco moved between us slightly. Everyone breathe. Rafael laughed nervously. Well, this is going great. Elena looked past Marco to Soria. What happens if one of us removes material from the room? Soria replied. You may remove material. You may destroy material. You may trade it. You may expose it. The rules are intentionally permissive. Of course they are, Marco said. Dad built a knife fight and called it estate planning. I slid the drive into my coat pocket, Elena noticed. So did Rafael. So did Clara Good. Let them. The group agreement had died before the first binder closed. Marco reached for his own binder next. No, Elena said. He looked at her. Process is over. He opened it. The first page was a photograph of his car. Not the Jaguar, a black Range Rover from 15 years ago. Front bumper dented, windshield cracked on the passenger side. Marco stopped moving. Rafael whispered, "Oh hell." Elena looked down. The second page was a police incident report from a rainy night in October. Pedestrian struck near Harbor Avenue. Driver fled. Victim survived 3 days before dying of internal injuries. No suspect identified. Attached was a repair invoice from a private garage owned by a Delgado holding company. The room seemed to tilt. Marco stared at the page as though it had reached up and put both hands around his throat. I remembered the empty chair at dinner. For the person who might have been sitting there, I had thought it was one of Father's cruel little morality plays. I had not known there was actually a dead person. "Marco," I said. He closed the binder. Elena placed her hand on it. "Open it." His eyes lifted slowly to hers. "Move your hand. We need to know what we're dealing with. You need to move your hand." Rafael backed away from the table, Clara whispered. Victor covered it up. Marco's face twisted. "Victor ordered me to keep driving." The words hit the room like a gunshot. Elena froze. I felt the old house, the old rules, the old training breathing through us. Marco looked at me then, and the charm was gone. All that remained was the boy who had sat beside an empty chair for a month and never told anyone why. "I stopped," he said. "I wanted to stop. He was in the car with me. He told me if I got out, I would ruin the family over someone already dead." His voice cracked on the last word. "She wasn't dead," Elena said. Marco flinched. "She died 3 days later," Elena continued, softer now but no less brutal. Marco opened the binder again, hands shaking. There was a red envelope in the back. He stared at it. Then he tore it out, shoved it inside his jacket, and stepped away from the table. Elena said, "Marco, don't." He looked at all of us. "Cooperation," he said, "is what people ask for when they've already chosen their leverage." Then he walked to the door. Soria did not stop him. None of us did. The door closed behind him. Rafael looked at Elena. "Still want process?" She did not answer. Instead, she reached for Rafael's binder. He slapped his hand down on top of it. "Touch that and I swear to God, Elena." Her voice was ice. "Remove your hand." Number Elena smiled then. Not warmly. Not kindly. Victor's smile. "You are afraid of a spreadsheet," she said. Rafael's face changed. That was all the confirmation she needed. Tax fraud, shell companies, pension money, false transfers, whatever waited in Rafael's binder had already shown its teeth yesterday in that sample page. He snatched his binder from the table and hugged it against his chest like a child protecting stolen candy. "I need air," he said. Clara stepped in front of the door. "No one should leave alone." Rafael laughed in her face. "You don't get to play mother now." Clara did not move. Rafael leaned closer. "How much did you know?" Her expression flickered. Rafael saw it. We all did. He smiled slowly. "Oh, that's interesting." Elena turned. Clara said nothing. Rafael looked from her to us, his panic transforming into something uglier. "She knew," he said. "Maybe not all of it, but enough." Clara's voice was quiet. "You children think Victor became what he was alone?" That sentence changed the room, because until then, Clara had been the widow. Maybe greedy. Maybe trapped. Chapter 3. The missing binder. The first thing I heard in the red emergency light was Rafael saying, "No, no, 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 no," not loudly, not dramatically, just the broken repetition of a man watching his life leave the room without him. The vault viewing room had changed in seconds. The clean steel table, the white walls, the careful legal order Soria had tried to impose, all of it now looked like a crime scene. Red lights pulsed overhead. Shadows jumped across my siblings' faces. The locked door stood shut, silent and absolute, while somewhere beyond it, an alarm began to wail in short mechanical bursts. Rafael lunged for the table as if his binder might reappear through force of panic. It didn't. He slapped both hands against the empty steel. "Where is it?" Elena was already moving, checking the corners, the floor, the chair backs, as though Rafael's binder might have crawled into hiding. "Everyone stay still," she snapped. Marco was gone. Soria was gone. Rafael's binder was gone, and someone had tried to take the drive from my pocket in the dark. I stepped backward until my spine touched the wall. My right elbow still throbbed from striking whoever had reached for me. I looked at Elena first. She stood near the table, jaw set, eyes sharp, one hand braced against the steel. No sign of pain. Rafael was too frantic, pacing in a tight circle, breathing hard. Clara stood near the door, one gloved hand against her ribs. I looked closer. Her breathing was controlled, but shallow. I had hit Clara. She felt my eyes on her and looked back. Neither of us said a word. Rafael turned on Elena. "You took it." Elena laughed once, cold and disbelieving. "While standing 10 feet away in a blackout? You could have arranged it." "With what? Telekinesis? You wanted leverage?" "We all want leverage," Elena said. "That does not make me a magician." Rafael pointed at me. "Then she took it." I stared at him. "I was defending my pocket." "Your pocket?" "My red envelope drive." His eyes flickered. Elena's head turned toward me. "Someone tried to take it." "Yes? Who?" I looked at Clara. Clara's mouth tightened. Rafael saw the exchange and barked a laugh. "Oh, perfect, the widow has hands." Clara straightened. "Be careful, Rafael." "Why? Are you going to steal my binder twice?" "I did not take your binder, but you went for Isabel's drive." Clara said nothing. That silence was answer enough. Elena stepped toward her. "Why?" Clara's eyes did not leave mine. "Because Victor wanted her to keep it." That made the room go still. I slowly removed my hand from my coat pocket, keeping the drive buried safely inside. "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means your father never gave anyone anything without purpose." "He didn't give it to me," I said. "He trapped me with it." In this family, those are often the same thing. The alarm stopped. The sudden silence was worse. A speaker clicked somewhere in the ceiling. A woman's voice, calm and recorded, said, "Vault security interruption resolved. Please remain in place for authorization." Elena looked up. "Authorization from whom?" No answer. Then the door unlocked, not opened. Unlocked, the click was soft, but every one of us heard it. Rafael bolted first. Elena caught his sleeve. "Don't be stupid." He tore free. "My binder is gone." You run blindly into a corridor after a staged blackout, and you may not come back. Good, then you can inherit my corpse too. He threw the door open. The corridor outside was empty. Emergency lights glowed along the marble floor. The bank manager was nowhere in sight. No guards, no Soria, no Marco, no footsteps, no voices. Only a long corridor leading back toward the vault elevator. Rafael ran. Elena cursed and followed. Clara moved after them. I hesitated just long enough to look back at the table. My binder remained there, closed. Marco's binder remained there, open to the hit and run file. Elena's binder sat untouched. The black safety deposit box remained open like an empty mouth. And beside it, almost hidden beneath the edge of Marco's binder, was one small thing that had not been there before. A cufflink, silver, engraved with the Delgado crest, my father's crest. I picked it up using the edge of my sleeve. It was warm. Not room temperature. Warm, someone had been in that room with us during the blackout. Not one of us. Someone close enough to take Rafael's binder from the table. Close enough to leave a cufflink behind. Close enough to pass through a locked vault like a ghost. I put the cufflink into my pocket beside the drive and ran. By the time I reached the elevator, Rafael was shouting at the bank manager, who looked genuinely terrified. 2 guards stood with hands near their jackets. Not yet drawing weapons, but close. "I want every camera," Rafael said. "Every hallway, every vault feed, every angle from the last 10 minutes. The manager looked at Elena. He had already identified her as the one most likely to sue him into dust. "Miss Delgado, there was a temporary systems failure." Elena's voice was quiet, dangerous. In a bank that stores 9-figure private assets, it appears to have affected only this level. How convenient, the manager swallowed. Our technicians are reviewing. No, Elena said. We are reviewing. I cannot allow unauthorized. My father held private controlling interest in 3 holding companies connected to this institution. Elena said, if you finish that sentence poorly, I will spend the rest of this week teaching your board what unauthorized means. The man went pale. Rafael was still shaking. My property was stolen. Marco's voice came from behind us. Technically, Dad's property was stolen. We all turned. Marco stood near the end of the corridor, breathing hard, his coat wet as if he had been outside. His red envelope was still tucked inside his jacket, but his face had changed. He looked less frightened now, more determined. Elena stepped toward him. Where were you, trying to leave? Before or after the blackout? Before? Convenient. Marco's eyes narrowed. You think I took Rafael's binder? I think you walked out with your red envelope and vanished seconds before the room went dark. I was in the elevator when the lights cut. Ask the guard. The guard who is currently missing? Marco looked toward the security station. For the first time he seemed to realize the corridor was too empty. Who here is Soria? He asked. That, I said, is becoming a very expensive question. The manager's lips parted. Mr. Soria left the secured area at 10:43 am. Elena turned sharply. Impossible. He was in the room with us at 10:47 am when the video played. The manager shook his head. Our access log shows his card exiting at 10:43 am. Rafael laughed, a thin, unsteady sound. So either your system is wrong, or Soria is a magician too, Marco said. Or the Soria in the room wasn't Soria. Nobody liked that. Not even Rafael, because once spoken, it fit too well. Victor Delgado did not need ghosts if he had doubles, passwords, forged access logs, and employees frightened enough to see nothing. Elena demanded the security footage. The bank resisted for exactly 6 minutes before Clara made a phone call. That was all, one call. She stepped aside, spoke in a low voice in Portuguese, and handed the phone to the bank manager. He listened. His face changed. Then he gave us a private conference room upstairs and access to a limited security review. Elena noticed, so did I. When the manager left to retrieve the footage, Elena faced Clara, who was on the phone. Clara removed her gloves finger by finger. Summoning who owes me. That is not an answer. It is the only one you are getting. Rafael stared at her. You said wives remember what men forget to hide. Yes. What else did you remember? Clara looked at him with such cold disappointment that for a second, I saw the woman my father must have admired. Enough to know that none of you children understood the size of the house you were born in, she said. Marco laughed softly. The mansion seemed pretty big. I do not mean stone and windows. No, Elena said. You mean the criminal structure. Clara did not flinch. The word hung there, criminal. Not business, not portfolio, not operations, criminal. My father's empire had always existed behind polite language. Shipping, security, holdings, advisory, logistics, procurement. Words clean enough for boardrooms and dirty enough for everything else. Rafael sat down heavily. My binder is out there. Elena looked at him. Then tell us what we're looking for. Number, Rafael. Number. If we don't know what matters, we can't help contain it. He looked up at her with bloodshot eyes. You don't want to contain it. You want to price it. That silenced her. Marco lowered himself into a chair across from Rafael. Was it just tax fraud? Rafael smiled bitterly. Just. People don't panic like that over taxes. Elena does. Elena ignored him. I sat near the far end of the table, fingers curled around the drive in my pocket. Clara's failed attempt to steal it had changed the weight of it before. It had been evidence. Now it felt like bait. Rafael, I said, Who would benefit from taking your binder first? He looked at me like I had betrayed him by asking the right question. All of you, not equally. Elena nodded once. She was listening now. I continued. Marco had already left with his envelope. Elena hadn't opened hers. I had my drive. Your binder vanished. That means someone either wanted your evidence specifically or wanted us to think you were the weakest piece. I am not weak. I didn't say you were. You implied it. You are panicking too loudly to hear implications. Marco almost smiled. Rafael didn't. His face changed slowly, fear hardening into suspicion. You always do that, he said. What? Act like you are outside it, like you are cleaner because you talk less. I felt Elena watching me, Marco too. Rafael leaned forward. But Dad didn't put an empty binder together for you, did he? And that drive, whatever's on it, you took it fast. You didn't want us seeing all of it. Correct, he blinked. I held his gaze. I don't. The honesty unsettled him more than denial would have. Good. The conference room door opened. The bank manager returned with a security technician and a laptop. The footage was loaded under protest, with timestamps and camera angles displayed in a grid. We watched the vault corridor first, at 10:30, 9 a.m. Marco left the viewing room, red envelope visible in his hand. He walked toward the elevator. He did not look back. He entered the elevator at 10:40, 1 a.m. At 10:42 a.m., Soria left the viewing room. Elena sat forward. There. But something was wrong. The footage showed Soria walking down the corridor, black folder under one arm, posture rigid, gait precise. At first glance, it was him. At second glance, it wasn't. Soria had a slight limp in his right leg from an old injury. I remembered it because, as a child, I had watched everyone in that house for weakness. The man in the footage did not limp. That's not Soria, I said. Elena's eyes snapped to me. You are sure? Yes. The manager looked sick. The footage continued. Fake Soria reached the elevator, used Soria's card, and exited the secured level. At 10:46 am, the lights flickered. At 10:47 am, the camera feed in the vault corridor froze. Not went black, froze. The time stamp continued moving, but the image held still. A loop. A professional loop. Rafael whispered, Dad. At 10:49 am, the footage resumed. The corridor was empty. No one carrying a binder. No one entering, no one leaving. But inside the viewing room, the evidence had vanished. Elena demanded the room footage. The technician hesitated. There is no camera inside the private viewing room. Marco laughed. No bank camera, maybe. The technician looked confused. We did not explain. Victor had watched us. That much was certain. The question was whether he had watched through bank systems, his own devices, or the eyes of someone in the room. The manager kept apologizing. Elena kept threatening. Rafael kept replaying the missing minutes, like obsession could force the truth from blank footage. I watched Clara. She watched the screen only once. Then she watched us. That told me something. Clara was not surprised by systems failure, false exits, or hidden cameras. She was surprised by the missing binder that mattered. By noon, we left Marwick Federal Trust with less than we had brought in. Marco had his red envelope. I had my red envelope drive and my father's cufflink. Elena had her unopened binder. I took my binder too because no one stopped me. Rafael had nothing but terror. The bank promised an internal investigation. Elena promised external consequences. Clara said nothing. The sky outside had cleared, but the city looked washed, out and hostile, as if rain had stripped away its lies. We gathered beside the curb. For once, none of us wanted to separate. That was how fear works. It makes enemies look temporarily useful. Elena spoke first. We go back to the estate. Marco shook his head. Absolutely not. It is controlled. It is watched. Everywhere's watched, Elena said. Rafael looked up sharply. My apartment. No, Elena said. You don't even know where it is. That is why no? I have private servers there. That got our attention. Marco stared at him. Of course you do, Rafael ignored him. If I can access my backups, I might be able to identify what was in the binder from Dad's sample. Financial trails, shell names. Maybe what he collected. Maybe what's missing. Elena's expression shifted. You kept backups of your fraud. Rafael pointed at her. Do not use that tone while standing next to your own unopened binder. Answer the question. I kept records that can help me understand what Dad had. That sounds like yes. It sounds like survival. Clara said quietly. Victor would have anticipated your apartment. Rafael looked at her. Victor anticipated everything until somebody stole the wrong binder. Did they? She asked. The question landed. Did they steal the wrong binder, or exactly the right one? Before anyone could respond, Marco's phone buzzed. We had retrieved our devices when leaving the bank, though by then none of us trusted them. He looked at the screen, his face drained. Elena said. What? Marco turned the phone toward us. It was a news alert. A cold case article had just gone live from a local investigative site. Headline: Nebraska, W evidence. May reopen Harbor Avenue hit. And run linked to prominent family. Marco's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Elena grabbed the phone and scanned the article. It doesn't name you, she said quickly. Yet, Rafael replied. Marco took the phone back with shaking hands. This was in my binder. I felt the city tilt around us. The game had changed again. Someone had not just stolen Rafael's binder. Someone had started using Marco's. His red envelope was still in his jacket, but ordinary evidence had already escaped, or been released, or triggered. Victor's rules echoed in my mind. Destroy. Neutralize. Expose. Conceal. Weaponize. We had assumed those were options. Maybe they were deadlines. Elena looked at Marco. Give me your binder. Number. Marco, this article proves material is leaking. Exactly why I am not giving you anything. I can help you contain it. You mean control it? Yes, she said, because someone has to. Marco stared at her. You really don't hear yourself, do you? Rafael laughed bitterly. Dad would be proud. Elena turned on him. Your binder is missing, and my brother is about to be tied to a fatal hit. And run, save your commentary. Our brother, I said. Elena stopped. It was small, but I saw the hit land. Our brother, not my client, not my liability. Our brother. Marco looked at me then, and for a second, the boy from the old house was there again. Then his phone buzzed a second time. A message. No caller 499. He read it aloud, voice hollow. One envelope protects you, one confession frees you. Choose before nightfall. Beneath the message was a photograph. Not of the accident, not of the dead woman. A photograph of Marco at 16, sitting alone at the dinner table beside the empty chair. My father had taken it. Of course he had. Marco looked like he might break. Not because of prison, not because of scandal, because Victor had turned even his childhood punishment into stored ammunition. Clara moved toward him, but he stepped back. Don't. She stopped. Elena's phone buzzed next, then Rafael's, then mine. 4 messages at once. Mine read, The cufflink belongs to the man who entered the room. Ask Clara where its pair is. My hand went instinctively to my pocket. Slowly, I turned to Clara. Her face had gone white. Show us your wrists, I said. Marco looked confused. What? Show us your wrists. Clara did not move. Elena understood first. Her eyes dropped to Clara's sleeves. Clara, she said. Clara raised her hands. Her ivory cuffs slipped back. On her left wrist, beneath a delicate bracelet, was a man's silver cufflink fastened through the fabric. The Delgado crest, one cufflink, only one. I removed the matching cufflink from my pocket and placed it in my palm. Rafael stared. "You said you didn't take my binder." "I didn't," Clara whispered. Elena stepped closer. "Then why do you have that?" Clara looked past us toward the bank entrance, toward the stone building, toward whatever invisible network my father had built beneath our lives. "Because Victor gave it to me before he died." Marco's voice was rough. "Why?" Clara's eyes filled with something that was not tears. It was memory. "He said when the children finally saw the Empire clearly, one of them would accuse me first." Rafael took a step toward her. "Where is my binder?" "I don't know." "Liar." "I don't know." He reached for her arm. I moved without thinking and caught his wrist. Rafael glared at me. "Let go. Number, she knows." "Maybe, but grabbing her in front of a bank with cameras is stupid even for us." He pulled away. Elena's phone buzzed again. She looked down. For the first time all day, true fear crossed her face. Not anger, not calculation. Fear. Marco saw it. "What did you get?" She did not answer. Rafael smiled slowly despite everything. "Oh, now privacy matters." Elena locked her phone, but I had already seen 3 words in the preview: Judge Mallory file. Elena's binder had begun to open without her touching it. The drive in my pocket felt hotter, the cufflink in my palm heavier. Rafael's missing binder, Marco's leaking evidence, Elena's buried judicial secret, Clara's cufflink, Soria's false exit, the live video, the hidden cameras. Everything was moving faster than our understanding, and somewhere behind all of it, Victor Delgado was alive. Or something worse than alive, a dead man with infrastructure. Elena looked at each of us. Her voice, when she spoke, was stripped of polish. "We go to Rafael's apartment, now," Marco said. "You just said no." I changed my mind. "Because your phone buzzed. Because whoever is releasing evidence is already ahead of us. We need information faster than they can weaponize it." Rafael swallowed. "My servers can help." Clara shook her head. "Victor will be waiting there." I looked at her. "Then we stop going where Victor wants us comfortable," I said. "We go where he thinks we're weakest." Elena frowned. "Meaning?" I looked at the cufflink in my palm, then at Clara, then back toward the river, where the Delgado estate rose somewhere
Rain struck the windows of my childhood bedroom in hard. I sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing my funeral dress, staring at my reflection in the dark glass. For years, I had believed I escaped this house. I had built a life small enough to avoid my father's shadow, a modest apartment, a quiet job consulting for nonprofit archives, friends he did not know, habits he would find boring. I had made myself uninteresting on purpose. But Victor Delgado had never mistaken quiet for harmless. That was what frightened me. A soft knock came at the door. I did not answer. The door opened anyway. Marco stood in the hall, hair damp, shirt collar open, whiskey still on his breath. "You awake?" He stepped inside and closed the door. We had been close once, before the family taught us closeness was liability. Marco used to sneak me books from the forbidden shelves. I used to cover for him when he slipped out at night. Then we grew up. Secrets became currency. Affection became risk. He looked around the room. God, he kept it the same. He kept everything. Marco nodded, then leaned against the dresser. For once, he did not perform charm. He looked tired, older. "What do you think is in mine?" he asked. "That depends on which sin he liked best." A short laugh escaped him, then silence. Rain filled the space between us. Finally he said, "There are things Elena can't see." I looked at him. He swallowed. "Things no one can see." "There it is," I said. "What?" The cooperation plan lasted 4 hours. His face tightened. "I am serious." "So am I. I am asking for your help." "No," I said. "You are asking whether I am still invisible enough to be useful." That hurt him. I saw it land. "Good." I deserved that, he said quietly. The old version of me might have softened. The funeral had buried her too. What did you do, Marco? His eyes moved to the rain, streaked window. For a long moment, I thought he might tell me. Then the Delgado in him won. Nothing I had a choice in. I almost laughed. That was the family anthem. Nothing I had a choice in. He left a minute later. I locked the door behind him. Then I crossed the room, knelt beside the old radiator, and reached behind the loose section of baseboard I had discovered when I was 13. My fingers found the small metal drive still taped there. I had hidden it years ago. The night I learned my father's cameras did not cover every room. Everyone thought the Blackmail Box began tomorrow. They were wrong. In our family, it had begun long before any of us were born. I held the drive in my palm and listened to the rain batter the glass. Somewhere in the mansion, floorboards creaked. Pipes groaned. Old walls settled. And then, from the corner of the ceiling above the wardrobe, came the faintest red blink. Once, twice, gone. I stopped breathing. There had never been a camera there before. Slowly, I stood. The room was dark, except for the storm light. I looked directly at the corner. Nothing. No sound. No movement. Only my own reflection in the window, pale and still, holding a secret my dead father should not have known existed. Then my phone buzzed. No caller 499. A message appeared on the screen. Sleep well, Isabel. Tomorrow is the easy part. My hand went numb, because beneath the words was a photograph. Not old, not from years ago. It was a photograph of me standing in that room right now, holding the hidden drive in my open palm. And for the first time since they lowered Victor Delgado into the ground, I felt something like grief. Not because my father was dead, because I was suddenly, horribly certain he wasn't.
Chapter 4. The Chapel Door. At 2:57 p.m., we stood beneath. The private chapel had been sealed after our mother's death. That was the family story. Out of respect, Father said, out of grief. But Victor Delgado had never respected grief. He used it. The door was black oak, reinforced with iron, set at the bottom of a narrow stone stairwell that smelled of dust and damp earth. Above the arch, a small bronze crucifix hung crooked green with age. Marco stood farthest from it. Elena held a flashlight in one hand and her phone in the other, though neither had signal underground. Rafael kept glancing behind us. Clara stood closest to the door, pale and silent, still wearing the single Delgado cufflink at her wrist, like a confession. At exactly 3 o'clock, the lock clicked open by itself. No one moved. Then my phone buzzed. No caller 499. Enter as a family. Leave as heirs. Marco whispered. I hate him. Elena pushed the door open. The chapel was smaller than I remembered, but colder. Rows of old wooden pews faced a marble altar veined with black. Dust lay thick on everything except the center aisle, where fresh footprints marked the stone. Someone had been here recently. Behind the altar hung a large painting of the Virgin Mary, her face sorrowful, her hands open. I remembered praying beneath that painting as a child, begging God to make our house normal. God had declined, Rafael pointed. There. Behind the altar, one wall panel sat slightly open. Elena crossed first and pulled it wide. A safe waited inside. Not old, digital, modern. On the keypad, 4 small lights blinked red. Then a speaker crackled overhead. My father's voice filled the chapel. Children, Marco flinched. Victor continued, calm and amused. You are late to understanding but punctual to fear. Acceptable. Elena shouted. Where are you? Still asking the wrong question. Rafael yelled. Where is my binder? A pause. Closer than your courage. The safe beeped. Its door unlocked. Inside were 5 binders. Not 4. 5. Elena removed them, one by one. Clara Delgado, Soria, Victor Delgado, and 2 unlabeled black binders. Rafael grabbed for his missing binder, but it was not there. Instead, The first unlabeled binder contained photographs of us in the bank vault, taken from inside the room during the blackout. My breath caught. One image showed Clara reaching for my pocket. Another showed a man in Soria's suit removing Rafael's binder from the table. The man's face was turned just enough to see. It was Thomas, my father's old driver. The man who had beaten Peter Langdon in the alley 11 years ago. Marco cursed. "He's alive too," Clara whispered. "Of course he is." Elena opened the second unlabeled binder. Inside were organizational charts, companies, shell trusts, judges, police captains, customs officers, shipping routes, private security contracts, offshore accounts, not inheritance documents, a criminal empire map. Rafael leaned over the pages, eyes widening. "This is everything." "No," Clara said softly. "This is what Victor wanted found." Elena opened Clara's binder. The first page was a marriage contract. The second was a series of photographs. Clara meeting with bankers, prosecutors, foreign intermediaries. Marco looked at her. "You weren't trapped." Clara's face hardened. No woman survives Victor Delgado by being merely trapped. Then came the red envelope. Elena opened it before Clara could stop her. Inside was a handwritten letter from our mother. "My mother." Elena read it aloud, voice breaking despite herself. "If something happens to me, Victor will say it was illness. It was not. He is moving money through the chapel safe. Clara knows. Soria knows. Thomas knows. My children are not safe here." The chapel went silent. Marco sat down hard in the front pew. Rafael stopped breathing. I felt the world narrow. "Our mother wrote this?" I asked. Clara closed her eyes. "Yes." "You knew," Elena said. Clara's voice trembled. "I found it after she died, and you did nothing?" "I was 26. Victor owned police, doctors, judges. I kept it because I thought one day it might matter." Marco stood shaking. "It mattered then." Clara looked at him, wounded but not innocent. "Yes," the speaker crackled again. Victor's voice returned, sentiment always inefficient. Elena turned in a slow circle, searching the ceiling. "Show yourself." The altar wall slid open. Behind it was not a passage, it was a screen. Victor appeared live, seated in a dark office, older than the funeral portrait but very much alive. Rafael lunged toward the screen. "You sick son of a..." "Careful," Victor said. "You still need what I know." "No," I said. Everyone looked at me. I stepped toward the altar, holding my red envelope drive. "You wanted me to keep this because it completes something." Chapter 5. The Last Heir. Thomas's laugh moved through the walls like something alive. Rafael backed toward the altar. "Tell me that's a recording." No one did. The chapel lights flickered once, then dimmed to a low amber glow. On the screen, Victor sat perfectly still, watching us from whatever hidden room he had chosen as his throne. "You foolish girl," he said to me. For the first time his voice lacked amusement. That was how I knew I had hurt him, not wounded his empire, not inconvenienced his plans. Hurt him. The upload was complete. His secrets were no longer locked in safes, binders, hard drives, or carefully managed fear. They were moving outward now into systems he did not control. Reporters, agents, prosecutors, victims' families, people with reasons to dig and no reason to protect him. Elena looked at me. "You really sent everything?" "Yes." Rafael's voice cracked. "My files too." I turned to him. "All of it." He looked like he wanted to hate me. Then something in him collapsed. "Good," he whispered. Marco stared at the floor. One hand pressed against the red envelope inside his jacket. "The hit and run?" "Yes." His face tightened with pain, but he nodded. "Good," he said too. Victor's eyes moved across us on the screen. "You think confession is victory?" "No," Elena said, "but evidence is." The speaker clicked. A second screen came alive beside Victor's face. "Security footage, Thomas. older now but still broad and dangerous, walked down the stone corridor outside the chapel carrying a pistol low at his side. Clara inhaled sharply. Victor, my father did not look at her. Every empire needs a loyal hand. Marco stepped in front of me. It was so instinctive, so unlike the Marco who joked and deflected and ran, that for 1 second I saw the brother he might have been if Victor had never trained us against one another. Elena searched the chapel walls. There has to be another exit. Clara pointed behind the last pew. Old sacristy, we ran. Behind a rotted wooden screen was a narrow service door hidden by stacked candle crates. Rafael shoved them aside while Elena searched for a latch, locked. Marco grabbed a brass candlestick from the altar and swung it hard. Once, twice, the old lock splintered. Behind us, the main chapel door opened. Thomas entered slowly, gun raised. "Children," he said, "your father wants one of you alive." Rafael laughed in terror. "That's generous." Thomas aimed at him. Elena stepped forward. "You shoot him, you lose your bargaining piece." Thomas smiled. "I only need one." That was when Clara moved. She did not scream. She did not beg. She simply crossed the aisle with the cold grace of a woman who had spent decades beside monsters and learned where the soft parts were. Thomas turned too late. Clara drove the silver Delgado cufflink into the side of his neck. He roared. The gun fired. The bullet struck the marble altar, exploding white stone into the air. Marco tackled Thomas from the side. Rafael grabbed the gun as it skidded across the floor. Elena seized my arm and dragged me through the broken sacristy door. "Move." The passage beyond was narrow, damp, and black. We stumbled through it by phone light, coughing on dust, hearing Marco and Thomas crash against pews behind us. Then Marco appeared in the doorway, bleeding from his temple. "Go, Marco," I shouted. He slammed the door behind him and wedged the broken candlestick through the handle. Something heavy hit it from the other side once, twice. The wood cracked but held. We ran until the passage angled upward and ended at an iron hatch beneath the old greenhouse. Elena and Rafael forced it open together, and cold daylight poured over us. Sirens wailed in the distance. Not estate security, real sirens. For once, Victor Delgado had not reached them first. We emerged into the ruined greenhouse, gasping beneath broken panes of glass. Clara came last, blood on her sleeve, face white but steady. On my phone, messages poured in. Unknown numbers, news alerts, missed calls, federal contact lines. The world had received my father. The screen in the chapel was gone from sight, but Victor's voice suddenly crackled from the greenhouse speakers. "You think you have won?" I looked up. There were cameras among the vines. Of course there were. "No," I said, breathless. We finally stopped playing. A long silence followed. Then Victor spoke softly. "There can still be an heir." Elena laughed, but there were tears in it. "You still don't understand. None of us want your throne." Rafael looked at her. Then Marco. Then me. For the first time in our adult lives, no one corrected the word us. Black SUVs appeared beyond the greenhouse hill, racing up the estate road. Federal agents spilled out before the vehicles fully stopped. Behind them came local police, reporters, and helicopters chopping the gray sky. Victor's cameras turned one by one, tracking the invasion of his private kingdom. Then the greenhouse speaker gave a final click. His voice returned, stripped bare. "Isabel." I looked straight into the nearest camera. "Yes, Father. You were my best." I stepped closer. "No," I said. "I was the one you missed." The camera light went dark. They found Victor 2 hours later in a hidden room behind the library, surrounded by monitors, emergency passports, cash, and enough blackmail files to bury half the city. He did not fight. Men like my father rarely do once the audience is gone. Tomas was arrested in the chapel, bleeding but alive. Soria was found bound in a maintenance room beneath the bank, furious and humiliated, which was the most human I had ever seen him. The trials took years. The Delgado portfolio was frozen, seized, audited, and carved apart in court. Marco confessed to the hit and run and met the victim's family in a room. No cameras were allowed to enter. Rafael cooperated until his fraud became testimony instead of leverage. Elena surrendered the Judge Mallory file herself and resigned from her firm before they could remove her name from the door. Clara testified too. Not enough to become innocent, enough to become useful. And me, I kept no inheritance. Not one house, not one account, not one blood-stained share. 6 months after the arrests, the four of us met at the cemetery again. This time there was no coffin, just our mother's grave, cleaned and covered with white flowers. Marco stood beside me. Elena placed the first rose. Rafael placed the second. I placed the last. For once, none of us lied. Not with tears, not with silence, not with polished family words. The Delgado name had once been a locked box full of rot and secrets. We opened it, and though the stench nearly destroyed us, daylight got in. That was not inheritance, it was freedom.